Hello, my name is Mike Geig, and welcome to my video on the StreamReader, which is part of my series on Windows programming with C#. In our previous video, we utilized the StreamReader to place text inside of a file. If you remember, we typed hello world, line to end world into a text file on our C drive. And I'll pull that up right here. We got the test folder, test file, hello world, line to end world. So that's basically just what we created in the previous video. And now we are going to look at opening that information and displaying it on the screen. So let me just move that out of the way. So in this particular example, there's many different ways we can pull this information out. So we're just going to go ahead and start with the most basic. I'm going to go ahead and add a button and a label to my program. All right. Yeah, we'll space it a little bit there. Okay, and I'll change the text to just read file. There we go. Okay, and I'll double click that to get an event handler. And the first thing I need to do is using system.io input output, which gives us access to the classes that we need. I'm going to go ahead and add a StreamReader to this button. So when the user clicks the button, we will have StreamReader, my reader, equals new StreamReader. All right, and I'm just going to hard code the value since now you know how to pull it from a text box and everything. We're just going to hard code the value. Okay, so equals new StreamReader. Okay. And that'll open the file. Now, reading the file is where you got to be very careful that you don't have exceptions that'll crash your program. It's probably pretty important to put this whole thing in a try-catch block. I'm not going to crash the program, however, I'm going to leave that code out. We're going to keep it simple. So you'd normally want this in a try-catch block, but I'm not worrying about it right now. Okay, so we have our StreamReader object, which is set to open the file that we've created. Okay, and so now all that's left is to actually read the information. So I could do, for instance, let's say we just want to utilize this label. I'm going to show you the very first way is just to read the entire contents of the file and dump it into a string. Okay, that may not always be the best thing, especially if you have thousands of lines of text in a file or big files or whatever. You might go over the capacity of a string, but this is the simplest thing. So we're going to actually just going to dump it right into this label. So I'm going to say label1 dot text. It's going to equal my reader dot read to end. That'll read the entire file. Okay, and then I'm going to say my reader dot close. Just like that. That's simple. We're going to read the entire contents of the file and we're going to put it into this label. So I'll run it and I'll click this button and I see hello world, line to end world. So we've read the entire contents of the file. And that's all well and good. All right, but we can get a little bit more granular with it. Okay, the way the stream works, and this is the way I kind of like to explain the stream to people, especially input streams. All right. A stream, if you think about it like an actual stream, like an actual flowing body of water, right? You can put things into that stream, like fish. Let's say there's fish in the stream, and in this case, the fish in the stream is the data from our file. Now, every time we read data from that file, it's like pulling the fish out of the stream. Okay, it's no longer in the stream. We've pulled it out and we've put it somewhere. So we have to be careful of keeping track of where we're at if we're trying to pull individual things. We can also just look at the information that's in the stream without pulling it out. All right. To give you an idea of what I'm talking about, let me just go ahead and delete this and space this out. I could say message box dot show my reader dot read line. Okay. We could also read to read a single character up until I believe it'll stop at a space. But we're going to do a read line. All right, just like a console.read and a console.read line. And then I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm just going to copy this and I'll paste it. All right. Now, if by virtue of reading data, the data were to stay in the stream, we would see the same line twice. However, I know that by reading data from the stream, we're actually pulling it out of the stream. All right, so I can hit play, and I will hit read file, and I'll see hello world, and then line 2. Okay, so we see two different lines, meaning that when we read the first bit of information from the stream, we we didn't. It's still there. It's not gone. It's still in the file. But we moved past it. Our reader has moved past it and it's ignoring it. Okay, and we're moving on to other things. Okay, we can look at what's next in a file without reading it. All right. So for instance, if I were to say my reader dot peek, peek is a way of looking at the next character in the file without reading it. And let me toString that. There we go. And am I missing a parenthesis? Okay. And I'll just pull this again, and I'll type it again. Okay. So if we run it now, well, we're going to see 72. The reason we're seeing 72 is because it's giving us the ASCII character, which basically is a number. So H is 72. Let me do, I actually have to write this a little bit different. Since it's going to give us basically an integer, we want to turn that into a character and then toString the whole thing. So let me just show you here. So first off, we'll do myReader.peek. That returns back an integer, okay, that we need to cast as a character. It's a little bit more complicated than I realized when I first started this. And then we need to put all of that into another set of parentheses and say .toString. Alright, so a bit more complex than it needed to be. I'm just going to go ahead and paste that. You can see we peek, we turn it to a character, we wrap the whole thing in parentheses, and then say toString on it. So now when I run it, I should see capital H, which is the H in Hello World, which is ASCII character 72. Now, because we're only peeking and we're not actually pulling from the stream, we'll see H again. Alright, because we left the H in the stream. Okay, so peek allows you to leave things in the stream for further use. Okay, so that was a little bit more involved than I really wanted to get with it, but what are you going to do? Okay, so basically talked about how when you read something from the stream, you read from the stream. So let's talk about what happens when there's nothing left. Okay, if you keep pulling from the stream, eventually there's going to be nothing left in the stream. And if you're not ready for it and you attempt to pull when there's nothing left, you can get an exception. You can crash your program. So what we're looking for is something called the end of file, or EOF, depending on what language you're using. All right, and what I can say is this. I can say while not myReader dot end of stream. It's not end of file in this case. In C# it's end of stream. So while not the end of stream, while we haven't reached the end, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do messagebox.show. I'm not putting it into the label because we wouldn't see the difference. So I'm going to do messagebox.show myReader dot read line. All right, just like that. Okay, so we'll read each and every line out of there. So let me hit play, and so we can hit read file here, and we'll see hello world, line 2, end world, and it exits. We've hit the end of stream. All right. What I could do, it would be a little annoying, but I could do it, is I could do, say, myReader.read, which again, if we look into it here, will return an int. I was mistaken earlier when I said it would return an entire word. In this case, it's only returning one character in int form, like peek. Okay, so we have to do the same thing we did with peek, which is to say char like this dot toString. So it's a little bit more complicated, but we can do this. And now, I mean, this will be annoying, but I'll run it, and you'll see that we'll get HELLO space WORLD space LI, line 2. All the way end world to the end of the file. Okay, and then I accidentally clicked the code so the form was hidden. So we could do that as well. So we can see how we can use a loop with not end of stream. We can pull individual characters, or we can pull entire lines. Obviously, pulling entire lines is much, much simpler. All right. Now, how this could be useful for you, since we are working with character-based flat files, we're not working with binary files, right? Let's say you needed to write some information to a file. Okay, say a person. Say a person has a first name, last name, age. All right. a very easy thing to do would be to write first name, last name, age, each on their own line in a flat file, right? So if I were to say open up the flat file, I would see Mike and then Geig and then 28, right? That way, when you're reading in, you would know that every third line that you read would be a first name, and then every third line that you read would be a second name, and every third line that you read would be a name. You see, you can make it work like that with the loop by keeping account of how many times have I read, and you can make files work for you very well like that. Okay, so that's going to conclude my video on the StreamReader. Basically, we talked about how to read the entire contents of a file, all right, with the read to end. We talked about the stream and how things get left in the stream if you don't pull them out. We talked about peek. We talked about the read method, which returns an int, which you have to cast into a character and then toString, which can be kind of a pain, but at the same time it's fairly useful to know. We talked about read line, and we talked about the end of stream, what I want to say, Boolean flag of the My Reader. So with that information, you pretty much have everything you need to start writing things to files, reading things from files, and working with files. It's not very difficult. It's just like console.readline, console.writeline. As long as you write to a file in a specific fashion, you read from a file in the same fashion, you can't really mess it up. It's fairly simplistic, and luckily with character-based files, we create files that are human readable. We can open them, we can say, hey, oh, by the way, that's how I did that. Okay, let me adjust my code to fix that.